Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the suppressed pistol pressed against Julian's temple was not cold, as the novels always claimed. It was searing hot, radiating the lethal intent of the man holding it. 3 nights ago, you played God. A voice whispered from the shadows of the back seat, smooth as velvet, yet heavy with the weight of a grave. You put something inside me, and now, I can't seem to live without it. Julian's breath hitched, his hands trembling where they were zip-tied together. He was just a second-year resident, a nobody drowning in student loans who had worked an extra shift at the chaotic downtown trauma center. He remembered the chaos, the dying John Doe wheeled in with multiple gunshot wounds, the blood bank running dry, and the desperate, reckless decision to hook his own vein to the patient's foreline because they shared the incredibly rare AB-negative blood type. He had saved a life and slipped away before the paperwork could implicate him in malpractice. He hadn't expected the man to wake up. He certainly hadn't expected the man to be him. Cashin Blackwood, the shadow king of the city's underworld. The car swerved, tires screeching against the wet asphalt, throwing Julian against the leather interior. The pistol didn't waver. "I saved your life," Julian choked out, trying to summon the authority he practiced in the wards. "Is this how you repay a debt?" Lightning flashed, illuminating Cashin's face. He was devastatingly handsome, with features carved from marble and eyes the color of obsidian, sharp, predatory, and currently dilated with a mix of pain and obsession. He leaned in, inhaling the scent of Julian's fear. "A debt?" Cashin mused, the corner of his lip curling. "No, doctor. You didn't just save me. You tethered me to you. And I don't leave loose ends." The penthouse was a fortress of glass and steel overlooking the sprawling, rain-slicked city. It screamed of lonely opulence, cold marble floors, minimalist art that cost more than a hospital wing, and a silence so profound it felt like a physical weight. Julian was not thrown into a dungeon. Instead, he was shoved into a master bedroom that smelled of sandalwood and antiseptic. His ties were cut, not by a henchman, but by Cashin himself. Rubbing his raw wrists, Julian backed away until his legs hit the edge of the massive bed. "You can't keep me here. People will notice I'm gone." The hospital believes you've taken a sudden leave of absence for a family emergency. Your landlord has been paid 6 months in advance. Your student loans. Cashin unbuttoned his blood-spattered dress shirt, revealing bandages that were seeping crimson. Vaporized. Julian stared at him, horror warring with confusion. "Why? If you wanted to thank me, a card would have sufficed. Maybe a fruit basket." Cashin winced as he peeled the shirt off, his sculpted torso marred by the violence of his world. He tossed the garment aside and took a step toward Julian. The predator was wounded, but that only made him more dangerous. "My enemies used a coagulant poison on the bullets," Cashin explained, his voice tight with pain. "It degrades the blood cells. My body is fighting it, but it burns through platelets faster than I can regenerate them. The only thing that stabilizes it is your blood." He stopped inches from Julian, towering over him. The intensity of his gaze was suffocating. "I don't need a doctor, Julian. I have surgeons on payroll who can stitch a man back together blindfolded. I need you. Your marrow. Your essence. You are my personal blood bag until this poison is flushed out." Julian felt a wave of dizziness. It was biological vampirism, wrapped in a mafia contract. "And if I refuse?" Cashin reached out, his calloused thumb tracing the frantic pulse in Julian's neck. The touch was electric, sending a shiver down Julian's spine that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the darker, dormant parts of his psyche. "Then I will drain you dry right now," Cashin murmured, his eyes dropping to Julian's lips. "But I prefer to keep the source fresh. Stay. Keep me alive. And you can have anything you desire within these walls." It was a cage. A gilded, luxurious cage, but a cage nonetheless. Julian looked at the bandages soaking through on Cashin's chest. The doctor in him overrode the hostage. "Sit down," Julian commanded, his voice trembling slightly but firm. Cashin blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in tone. "I said sit down," Julian repeated, pointing to the bed. "If you bleed out on this expensive rug, I'm the one who loses. If I'm your lifeline, Mr. Blackwood," Then you follow my orders regarding your health. Understood. A slow, terrifying grin spread across Cashin's face. He sat. As you wish, doctor. Weeks blurred into a surreal routine. The dynamic within the penthouse was a pendulum swinging between captor and captive, patient and healer. By day, Julian roamed the high-security apartment. Reading from Cashin's extensive library or staring out at the city, he was barred from entering. By night, the ritual took place. It was intimate. Dangerously so. Julian would set up the four-stand next to the chaise lounge where Cashin rested. He would roll up his own sleeve, the needle piercing his skin, and then do the same for Cashin. The tube connecting them was a lifeline of dark red, a visual representation of their bond. During these hours, the walls of the mafia Don crumbled. Cashin would ask questions, not interrogations, but genuine curiosities. He wanted to know why Julian became a doctor, to fix things, why he was alone, workaholic, and what he dreamed of, peace. In turn, Julian learned that Cashin wasn't born a monster, he was made one. The sole heir to the Blackwood Syndicate, he had been hunted since he was a child. The brutality was a shield, the coldness a survival mechanism. One stormy Tuesday, the power dynamic shifted irrevocably. Julian was checking the flow when Cashin's hand shot out, gripping Julian's wrist. His grip was weaker than usual. The poison was spiking again, fever burning in his eyes. Why do you stay? Cashin rasped, sweat beading on his forehead. I leave the door unlocked during the cleaning crew's shift. You could have run 3 times this week. Julian paused. He hadn't realized Cashin knew he knew. I took an oath, Julian whispered, avoiding Cashin's burning gaze. Do no harm. Liar, Cashin breathed. He pulled Julian closer, forcing him to kneel between his legs. You stay because you feel it too. The transfer. It's not just blood anymore, is it? Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. It was true. There was a sickening, intoxicating dependency forming. Seeing the most powerful man in the city vulnerable, relying solely on him for survival, fed a hunger Julian didn't know he possessed. And the way Cashin looked at him, like he was the only holy thing in a world of sin, was addictive. You're delirious, Julian deflected, reaching for a cool cloth. I'm dying, Julian, Cashin said, his voice dropping to a vulnerable timbre that shattered Julian's defenses. And the only thing that scares me is that I don't want you to leave when I'm cured. Before Julian could respond, the elevator chimed. It wasn't the cleaning crew. The doors slid open to reveal 3 men in tactical gear, silenced submachine guns raised. Leading them was a man Julian recognized from the news, Cashin's second-in-command, a man named Silas. Time to retire the king, Silas sneered, stepping into the foyer. Cashin moved with a speed that defied his condition. He ripped the 4 out of his arm, blood spraying across the silk sheets, and shoved Julian behind the heavy oak desk. Stay down, Cashin roared, drawing a hidden pistol from beneath the chaise cushion. The room erupted in chaos. Glass shattered as bullets tore through the panoramic window. Cashin fired back with lethal precision, dropping one assailant, but he was weak. His movements were lagging. Julian crouched behind the desk, his hands over his ears. He saw Silas flanking left, aiming for Cashin's exposed side. He's going to die, the thought paralyzed Julian. If I do nothing, he dies, and I go free. It was the logical choice. The safe choice. Julian grabbed a heavy, marble bust from the desk. As Silas leveled his weapon at Cashin, who was reloading, Julian lunged. He didn't have the grace of an assassin, but he had the desperation of a man protecting his own. He swung the marble bust with all his might, connecting with the back of Silas's head. The sound was sickening, a wet crunch. Silas crumpled to the floor, his gun skittering away. The distraction was enough. Cashin spun, putting 2 bullets into the remaining attacker. Silence fell, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the howling whine through the broken window. Julian stood over the unconscious body of Silas, his chest heaving, his hands shaking violently. He had just attacked a man. He had chosen violence. He had chosen Cashin. Cashin limped over, his face pale, blood dripping from his foresight. He looked at Silas, then at Julian. He didn't say a word. He simply holstered his gun, reached out, and pulled Julian into his arms. It wasn't a gentle embrace. It was a collision. Cashin buried his face in Julian's neck, inhaling the scent of his savior. Julian's hands found purchase on Cashin's back, clutching the ruined shirt, holding him up. "You idiot," Cashin whispered against his skin, his voice thick with emotion. "You could have run. I told you." Julian sobbed, the adrenaline crashing down on him. "I don't leave loose ends." The cleanup was efficient. Cashin's loyalists, the true ones, arrived within minutes. But the dynamic in the penthouse had changed forever. 3 days later, the poison was officially neutralized. Julian sat on the edge of the bed, his bag packed. The contract was fulfilled. Cashin stood by the repaired window, looking out at the city he had reclaimed. He wore a tailored suit, the armor of the kingpin back in place. He looked invincible again. "The car is waiting downstairs," Cashin said, not turning around. "You've been cleared of any involvement with Silas. Your debts remain paid. You are free, Julian." Julian looked at his bag. Then he looked at the man who had kidnapped him, threatened him, and ultimately worshipped him. He realized that the freedom waiting downstairs felt incredibly cold compared to the fire in this room. Julian stood up. He picked up his bag. He walked to the door. Cashin's shoulders tensed, but he didn't move. He wouldn't beg. A king does not beg. Julian opened the door, then paused. "You still have stitches that need to be removed in a week." Cashin turned slowly, his eyes wide with barely suppressed hope. "And," Julian continued, turning to face him, a small, sad smile playing on his lips, "I suspect your blood pressure will need constant monitoring. High-stress job, after all." Cashin crossed the room in 3 long strides. He didn't touch Julian, stopping inches away, respecting the choice. "Are you applying for the position, doctor?" "I'm negotiating terms," Julian corrected, his eyes flashing with a newfound confidence. "No more cages. No more threats. If I stay as your equal. Your partner." Cashin slowly sank to one knee, a gesture of submission that would have brought the underworld to its knees in shock. He took Julian's hand, pressing a kiss to the knuckles, right over the vein that had saved his life. "My life is in your veins, Julian," Cashin vowed, looking up with a devotion that bordered on religious. "You don't need to negotiate for what you already own. Stay. Rule with me." Julian dropped his bag. The sound echoed like a gavel striking a block. "Get up, Cashin," Julian whispered, leaning down to capture the mafia kingpin's lips in a searing kiss. "We have rounds to make." And that is how the healer captured the heart of the beast, binding them together not by chains, but by blood. If you enjoyed watching the doctor take control of the kingpin, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a kidnapper if he bowed at your feet? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Julian, young doctor, wearing white dress shirt with rolled sleeves, disheveled brown hair, holding a marble bust, looking shocked and fierce, protective stance. Man 2. Cashin, mafia boss, tall and muscular, wearing unbuttoned bloody black dress shirt, visible bandages on chest, holding a pistol, dark hair slicked back, looking at man 1 with intense obsession and awe. Background is shattered luxury penthouse window, rain pouring in, broken glass on floor, dark moody lighting, cinematic composition, sharp focus, intricate details.